Hello and welcome to CS201, the video for Chapter 7. This is week 3 of CS201. So I'll be going through Chapter 7 today, showing some examples, and then you guys will be taking a quiz. So, alright, this chapter is about functions and randomness. So the basic idea of a function is that we're going to group together a bunch of code into one kind of module, and we're going to call it from there. Might seem kind of confusing at first, but as we go, I think you'll begin to understand a little bit about how that works. In mathematics, we could think of a function as a mapping from one input to a single output. So for example, the absolute value of a number is a function. So if we take the absolute value of -5, we end up with 5. If we take the absolute value of 17.3, we end up with 17.3. You've used functions already. In fact, you used parse float in chapter 5. Parse float is just a function, and it takes a parameter. In this case, it's taking document.getElementById numbox.value. That whole thing is a what's known as a parameter. So the document.getElementById part that you see there, let's take this so I can kind of start to dissect that for you a little bit. So parse float here, let me view as syntax JavaScript. Parse float document.getElementById numbox.value. We assign that to something like num equals. So num becomes our variable, and the results of parsing this is assigned to num. So this part here is the parameter. So for example, that is the parameter. So parameter so that is the parameter, and the result, otherwise called the return result of the function, is some value. So if, for example, if we entered into numbox the string 2, the value would be 2. So the value, the return value, is 2 in that case. So this, again, this is the full parameter, and this is the function call with the parameter going into it. Another thing we could have done is we could have said num equals parse float of simply like 2, for example. And in this case, the parameter of this function is 2. Return result is 2. All right, so maybe that makes a little more sense. This is a simple string. It's sent into something called parse float, and it returns the value of 2. So getting back to our slideshow. This is what's known as a predefined function. JavaScript has a whole bunch of other functions that define various mathematical functions and that kind of thing. There's one called functest that you can take a look at. On the website, that is. Oh, by the way, if you're not sure of where to go, you can type in David Reed JavaScript examples. That's where I've been pulling a lot of stuff from. If you take a look at this is his functest tester, and I'm going to take a look at this. So we've got the math.max of -1.2 and 2. We evaluate that, and we show that the result is 2. So if we were actually to take a look at this page source, we see that it's not all that complicated. The math.max is an option, and when we click it, we just take the we just evaluate the results of that. Other math functions are math.square root, which is SQRT. It just gives us the result of a square root. Again, math.max, we pass in two numbers, and that gives us the maximum of those two values. Math.pow raises a number to a power. So for example, if we want 2 to the 10th, we put in 2 as the first parameter, 10 as the second parameter. Other ones are math.min, math.abs, math.round, math.ceil, math.floor. So if we wanted to make a page that does rounding, this is how we would go about doing that. This is the number rounder page. And we see that basically we've got the HTML. This is actually using JavaScript inside of the HTML again. I keep promising that we'll see some JavaScript outside of HTML in its own JS file. Hopefully by next week we'll see that. Well, actually, since we don't have class next week, it'll be the week after that. Anyway, in the onClick, we see that number is assigned to the results of parse float document.getElementById of number box dot value. And then rounded equals math.round of whatever that number is that we just got times 10 divided by 10. So we're essentially rounding it. So if we put in, for example, 3.14159 and we round it, it rounds to 3.1, to one decimal place. The reason for that is because we essentially are one decimal place results in 1 0, because basically we need to round that up and then divide it by 10 to get the full result. And then we send the rest to the output div right there. We see that working in practice there. Another one is math.random. This gives us random numbers. It'll actually give us a random number between 0 and 1. So if we call math.random purely, it could give us 0.33, 0.21, etc. We can also do math.random, use math.random to give a range. The way we go about doing that is we multiply the number by whatever the range is we want. So for example, if we want a range of 0 to 2, we would say 2 times math.random. If we wanted that result to be from 1 to 2, we would say math.random plus 1. So for example, this is the lucky number page. So if we want to select a random number between 0 and 10, say that's 2, and it's just kind of trying to mimic you guessing what your random number is. The results are the min val is the parse float, the max val is the parse float. Oh, by the way, don't let this ampersand number 39 here fool you. All that is doing is basically the equivalent of saying this: max box like that, and it would work exactly the same. See, this ampersand percent or ampersand dollar, I'm sorry, ampersand pound 39 semicolon, that's right there is equivalent to saying single quote. Sometimes people do that because they want to be sure that it's interpreted as a single quote. So for example, let me just, so that is the same as that. So anytime you see that, don't let that fool you. So this is assigning basically the parse float min-val to whatever we enter in here. Remember, this comes in as a string, and so we got to put some kind of a number in there. Actually, if I put like a non-number in there, like let's say I put Bob in there, it's going to give us not a defined number, because basically Bob cannot be translated to a number. But if we put in the string of 2, 2 can be translated to a number, and so we get a valid variable or valid result back from that. Anyway, so we assign min-val to the result parse float, max-val to the parse float, number to the math.floor of those two things, and then we set the inner HTML of it. All right, so functions provide a nice mechanism for simplifying some types of complex buttons. Like, for example, this is a big bunch of code. We say min equals parse float, max equals parse float, number equals math.floor, document.get element by id dot inner HTML equals. That's a whole bunch of stuff. User-defined functions are probably one of the most powerful aspects of JavaScript that allow us to take a bunch of code and put it in a user-defined function. We explore that fully in Chapter 9, but this gives you a preview of it. The way it looks is we basically have a function name, and it passes something back. It returns something. So it can optionally take parameters, and it can send things back. So for example, let's take a look at how that would work with another version of Lucky Number. This one. Now the actual beauty of this is this one should let you place breakpoints. Remember I mentioned before that breakpoints were problematic once they're inside of the pure HTML. We tried doing that in class actually, and we basically failed miserably. By the way, I figured out that you can do that in Chrome, but Chrome is not on the campus computers, so that's why I kind of didn't report that to you during the lab yesterday. It happens to be on the instructor machine up front there in Mac 122, but it's not on the, as far as I know, it's not on the student computers. So you can't place breakpoints in it. But this one you should be able to, because essentially what it's done is it's taken all of that code. Remember before where we said min value equals parse float of that, max value equals parse float of that, number equals math.floor, and then we set the inner HTML. All this stuff is now put in what we call a function called generate number. Generate number is simply called when the onClick happens. So here we see onClick equals generate number. So now that we have that power, you can imagine what separating things out into a separate JS script is going to involve. It's going to basically mean that this whole thing goes into its own JS, and then we get more into what people do in real life. And I'll show you that tomorrow in class on Thursday. This function is called from here. It has to be named exactly the same thing. So generate number, left parenthesis, right parenthesis. It jumps up here, and then it does its thing. So if I was to open this in Chrome, I'm actually going to open it in Firefox because I know that's what you guys have on the campus computers. So this is going to generate lucky number 7, so that works. I'm going to go to developer. So to do that, you go up to this little menu button, you go to developer, and I'm going to go to debugger. I'm going to attempt to put a breakpoint on this. To do that, I click the left mouse button just to the left of the number 10 in the generate number function that's part of our script code there. Then I'm going to reload this, hit it, and notice that I am now broke on that line. What I mean by broke is it stopped execution there. I just had clicked generate number. It didn't show me a number yet, but I'm stopped right here. The power of that is that I can then go and hit step over is what I want, step over. It will step over that line, go to the next line. Now I have min value loaded up, and I can actually look at the results of min value. Should be able to at least. Where the heck is it? Min value, there we go. So result of min value is 0. To get that, I went under the variables tab, global scope window, and if I scroll down, I can see the min value. I'm going to step over again, and I think there's the shortcut for this is F10, which is kind of common. Now max value is 9, and then we just do our thing. Now the power of this is that if your script is not working, you can place a breakpoint in your function and see what the values are coming in. So that's really cool, because before, remember, that did not work. As I said, it works in Google. It did not work in, it works in Google Chrome. It did not work in Firefox. Just on that simple example we tried yesterday in class. So anyway, and if you want to continue on, you can hit resume, and it generates a random number. So that's an important part to know. That's not really in the book, so I wanted to make sure you guys got that. Here is a example that's coded up to simulate the roll of a die, I should say, a 6-sided die. You click a button, you randomly get a result. This demonstrates the ability to store basically a bunch of images stored as balance3.com images /die1.gif, die2.gif, die6.gif. And it's going to choose a different image based on the results of that die roll. So for example, here we see that select image is called. Select image is the thing that does the random. So math.floor of math.random times 6. This gives us a number of 0 to 6, or actually 0 to 5 on the high end. And then we add 1 to it, so we get 1 through 6. And then we say that the image name is balance3.com/images/die plus roll. So that's either going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and then plus .gif. So document.getElementById die image.source equals the image name that we had just set. So this is a variable. We set that variable. We go down here, and the source of that die img ends up being whatever it is we just calculated. Die img has an ID. It has an existing die1, but this is going to be replaced every time we click select image. So if I click this, it goes to 6. And so forth. I'm going to preview it in Firefox. So I click it, 1, 5, 1, 2, 1. So it's showing you how to do some simple dice rolls. And again, just to be, just to cover this a little bit more, I'm going to go to the developer mode. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to developer, debugger, going to place a breakpoint, and to do that I go to the left of the number of the line I want. In this case I want it there. To get to that breakpoint, I just simply reload it, click on the roll, and bang, I'm at that breakpoint. And you can tell because it's green there. I hit F10, so it's done my roll. I can see the value of roll down here under window. It's alphabetical, so it's going to be under all these events. Roll is 2 right there. So that's how you do that. This could be generalized to be a random slideshow. So you could have slide1.jpg, slide2.jpg, And this is actually used in real life. That's quite often how people randomly select an image um, to load. We could also use this for generating random banner ads, which is another common thing done. For example, we could do a set interval call that basically calls a JavaScript function on a certain set interval. In this case, we do the set interval of 5,000. This is in milliseconds, so that's every half second that will change. It's microseconds actually. Yeah, micro. So that'll change every half second. And we're just doing a body on load for that. So the way that works is we've got banner ads. For example, now it said you can trust Honest Dave for your next used car. And then it changed again. So it's every half second that's changing. You can see it working there. The function is called select ad. It's selecting between 0 to 3 ads. Add 0, add 1, add 2, and add 3, all .gif, by doing the same technology we used, the same algorithm we used essentially for the die rolling. The only thing you have to do is basically in your on load, you have to say set interval, and remember this 39, this is the same thing as saying set interval like this. Select add 5,000. I'm going to reload this. Actually, I'm going to load this up just to show you that it works the same in Firefox. Eat at Dave's Tofu Hut. You can trust Honest Dave for your next used car, and it'll keep changing. And remember, I changed that ampersand pound 39 to semicolon to a simple quote, then 5,000. And that's it. So I will have a quiz for this up within moments, probably by the time you see this video. The quiz will be up there. All right, talk to you in class tomorrow.